Well, it's always been a bit of a bone of contention, this idea of sculpture and you're working on the wall and all these things. My premise is that you're an artist in effect. People would like to have categories, i.e. sculptor, painter, printmaker, whatever it may be. I make prints. I have to say I never painted. But I went to art college and studied sculpture. It was as simple as that. At the very beginning, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I found I was accepted in the sculpture department, and I had made one or two little carvings as a young boy out of logs. But sculpture became the thing I studied, and I ended up going to the Royal College doing sculpture, and it was a sort of physical occupation. There was always that element to construct, to make, to form. There were people coming out of colleges in London of the same age as me, and these are all artists who are established these days, and we all sort of grew up in a period which was experimental, which was really not considered by the establishment. And I talk about, the Tate and the Arts Council and all those people that had a bit of power. They were seriously not interested. I mean, nobody got interested until 72, 73, 74, because England was predominantly a culture that liked pop art, and movements were around, moving, Arte Povera in Italy, and like I say, Fluxus in mainland Europe, and conceptual art was sort of part of that as well, coming from America a little bit, land art, all these different ways of thinking. So it was my generation, and art was not just this traditional thing you made and known subject matter. I always quote somebody like Gilbert and George because I think, standing on the table, singing underneath the arches as singing sculpture, perfect. It's all been very accepted. This is a couple of guys standing on a table, and these were old drinking buddies of mine, and it was all about performance or sculpture or doing something, or it was not a studio-bound activity somehow. And my activity tended to go off traveling in different parts of the world. I was never a Richard Long type character who climbed mountains and, a lot of sort of strenuous stuff. I was sitting in funny little hotels in dirty little cities most of the time. But I loved being out and being off and being away and finding something different and complex and unknown, and often with no real idea of what to do or why I'm there, or all those confusing aspects to how you pick up information. It was this desire to make, build, construct, find, put together, and do exhibitions of all that sort of material. In a way, coming to the Ikon is not so different to going to other places to work in. Ideas are really coming from the studio, from whatever travel I may have been on recently, of where I picked up source material. I had done a series of drawings which had been shown in New York, and these were drawings where there was an impression left in big cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and many of the other large Japanese cities, which was quite forceful in my thinking, in the sense of this very overpowering element of the concrete building and the big cities. And there were other small influences which, if you flick through The Economist, you see different graphs showing you the ups and downs of economies or population growths or all these peaks and troughs in life. And the chance to do something in the Ikon was one more place that these ideas could be expressed, and in this case directly on the walls, not necessarily on paper. And everything that I've ever done on paper has always found itself transformed into some sort of wall or ceiling or floor drawing. I always see something which is small on paper as something that could be big. And this probably comes out of the tradition of sculpture. The second room I saw as much more of a, quasi so-called sculptural idea of when you pile something up. When you place one thing on top of another and you form a structure, and then there is an element of balance, of weight, of equilibrium. And so the basis of the idea is that the room is constructed out of a series of horizontal forms. And each one of these horizontal forms is somehow pinned onto another one. There's certainly something about strata in it and something about natural materials. And there are load elements to it, the weight of certain things bearing on other weights. So there is a certain architectural engineering element to how these things are constructed. I've always had an interest in architecture, in physics and in engineering, etc. Not that I am in any way an engineer. After looking at these two rooms, which I considered the two major rooms in the show, I realized that in the middle was this smaller room, and I was less interested to do yet one more room made of pastel. I wanted to have something which was a transition between the two, utterly different, a room that maybe had a different side of how I've worked, relatively dark and uncolourful. I wasn't looking for more colour, which has the flippancy maybe of grease, sticky, wet. People generally go to it, and it's got a whole lot of connotations which people find strange and interesting in terms of how you work on the wall, let alone how you get it off. It's a great material. Once it's troweled on, I finger it in with my fingers to give whatever direction I want the work to move. I've used trapezoids which give you a perspective in and out of each room. I feel like often a conductor in these things and lead violinist. So I also work on the walls, but I am orchestrating the whole thing. Let's get that bit done there, get that tape off there. It's really a very, very carefully managed process. And we had 2 weeks to get it done, which is again another there's the sort of tight schedule, but we did get it done on time. I always panic a little bit that we're not going to get it done, but the effort is immense in it. And then there's always that question that people ask me is but come on, you do all this work, it's immense work, and it's all going to be cleaned off in 2 months or 1 week or however long you've got your exhibition for. And that is it's a sort of question which is to do with the fact that it's the thing I love to do. It's about the desire to really make the best result that you can in these rooms. And it's that I can photograph and I can keep and I can develop and work on as a next stage. In 1 month, 5 months, I'll be working on things that have sort of come out of here. And it's really just like an enormous sketchbook. And the sketchbook does last, but these places move on. They are for artists to use over the years, and therefore no one person can dominate. It just happens to be that my work is hugely labor intensive and dominates the whole space, and people just can't believe that it gets washed off. These drawings go around you, and I said to someone the other day it's like if you do get some bricks and you put them together, you walk around it, you could technically call that a sculpture. It's not a painting, is it? It's something you've built up and you can walk around it. You can call it sculpture. Others may say it's not, but there's no reason why you shouldn't. I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm just building up these layers, and I'm building it around you. And of course, you can walk around it, but you walk around the perimeter of it. You don't walk through it, really, or you don't walk on the outside of it. You sort of walk around the inside of my sculpture. But they're all built up. They are all very important elements of how that wall is sustained on its own. It's a strong wall. There is a balance going on there the whole time. It's not like part of the wall is falling down. It's constructed well, in my view. That's part of what I have to figure out when I do a room like that. So sculpture is that. It's constructing and building and putting together and finding and assembling and you name it. I just happen to do it on the wall. Others maybe do it on the floor.